You're listening to Carrie Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
Welcome. You are listening to, watching the Financial Survival Network. Well, if you've been listening to this show over the years, you know how I feel about college. I think college can be a great experience, can have great value, can be a great investment in your child's or yourself's human capital, but you have to do it right. And that's a twofold process. Number one is to pick a major or your area of expertise that will actually give you a return on your investment. And number two is do all the hacks, all the ins and outs to minimize your eventual expense of sending junior to college. Got another expert here. Brad Baldridge is with us now. Brad, you've been doing this for many, many years now. You're a financial planner, but you made the evolution into college planning, which seems to me in some ways is more gratifying than being a wealth manager, helping people build wealth, because you can actually help your clients to avoid wealth destroying options that they may never have thought of. And you literally can be saving their kids from a lifetime of debt servitude. So on that note, I welcome you onto the show. Tell me, what are the three things that every person thinking of sending their child to college or every person who's thinking of attending college should do, in your opinion?
Right. I would say the first thing to realize is it's not, college planning especially is not very cookie cutter, in that you can't just do what your brother-in-law did and get the same results potentially, because there's a lot of moving parts and factors like the academic ability of your student and the family financial situation that most of the time isn't the same. So, where one family might do great on need-based aid, somebody else might do great on merit aid, and a third family might do great by saving and investing. And the reality of it is most families are going to do all of those things in some combination. And so it can be very complex. So I think that's probably one of the keys. Next, I would say start sooner than you think you need to. If you're hearing this, you probably should start thinking about it. You can divide it into what I call early stage and late stage college planning. So a little easier to understand what late stage is about. Late stage is you're here and you've got to deal with it, right? So you're visiting colleges, you're trying to figure out financial aid forms, you're dealing with the admissions process and filling out essays and applications and testing and all the different things. And all of that happens at the end of high school, so junior, senior year. So that's late stage. Early stage is you've got kids that are younger than that. So if you've got a 2-year-old and you think college is in their future, which is a tough call, but a lot of families are going to say, well, maybe we should save a little, or maybe we should prepare for that. And I think there's two ways to prepare. One is stop your lifestyle growth a little bit so that you have resources to help with college. Again, most families say things like, well, our number one goal is to get the kids through college. Our number two goal is to get to retirement. Then when you look at where they're spending their money, they're spending it everywhere except college and retirement. So it's easy to say, it's hard to do. So for many families, it's going to be just with the understanding that if, as a parent, you feel obligated to provide substantial college to your kids, by definition, you're going to have a smaller house or less vacations or work longer and not retire as early or whatever it might be to compensate for the fact that you decided to take some of your resources and apply them to college.
All right. So do you ever have a client where you say, don't send that kid to college?
Oh, yes. Or don't send this kid to college with your money. And I guess that's the last thing is, right, because there's some kids out there, right? You take the top 20% of students, and again, 20% I made up, and top is all relative. But there's a bunch of students out there that can go study whatever they want, do whatever they want, go to college wherever they go, and they're going to be fine no matter what they do. They're the kind of go-getter that can take some weird degree and figure out how to make a ton of money with it. Or they'll just do really well in their, they want to be a teacher and they're going to go on and be a principal and not, life will work out for them just fine. On the other end of the spectrum, I think there's a bunch of kids that are just going to have to learn through the school of hard knocks. I think it's the middle group where we can make a big difference, where, maybe college right away is not the right thing. Maybe they should be gap year or 2 or 3, or maybe the military, or maybe all the other strategies out there, right? Maybe going to community college for a year or 2 and then getting out in the workforce, getting some experience. I have a child of a family friend who didn't quite, started in engineering, didn't quite understand what engineering was about, went to work as a machinist for a couple of years, realized what engineering was about, and was then a phenomenal engineering student because he had real world experience. And when he was learning the stuff, he knew what he was learning and why he was learning it, and then got his degree and is doing very well now. But it was a little abstract for him at the beginning.
Right.
So there's lots of different paths.
Yeah, definitely. One of the biggest problems is students that enter college and don't finish, because they're still on the hook for the debt if they took on debt, and they got nothing to show for their efforts. How do you minimize that risk, especially if you're a parent and perhaps you're subsidizing the kids' education, or you're backstopping it in the form of a loan guarantee?
Right. So I think it harkens back to what I just said, is that, there's some kids that are going to be very focused, and it's pretty clear that they've got the drive and they're going to get it done. It's the ones in the middle or at the tail end where you say, well, we are taking a little bit of a risk. And that's when you would suggest, well, let's take a gap year. Now, there's a slippery slope. If they go off and go to work, it's really hard for most adults to go back to school, especially once they start, get married, have families, have all these obligations. Now college is really challenging. But yes, I think that's probably the biggest failure is, situations where the student doesn't actually finish their degree and they don't have a lot to show for it. Number 2 would be someone that, takes 6 years to get a 4-year degree because they weren't focused, and therefore has a lot more debt or a lot more challenges. So I think those are the biggest challenges out there, or the biggest negative results, and a large part of the population, it happens to them.
So
there are professionals out there that can help as well. So there's a new, I help on the financial side. I tend to work with parents. There are now professionals out there that tend to work with students as well. And some of them, their expertise is helping a student figure out what they want to be when they grow up, and what kind of majors will get them to that career, and, what has them excited. Because I think that's part of it too, is a lot of people stumble into college saying, I don't know why I'm doing this. I guess I'll pick this major, and I'm not excited about it. And then when times get tough, they can't rally because, again, they're not excited. They don't see why they're doing it other than mom said I should.
Exactly. So really what we're trying to do and what you're talking about is kind of like risk management,
right,
for parents and for children. It's really managing that risk in the best way possible. Obviously, you're not the educational or vocational counselor, but you're a financial counselor working in conjunction with that person. So obviously, you and I, we both went to college, both got degrees, advanced degrees, never stopped learning. But that isn't necessarily right for everybody, like we discussed. Really. So let's talk about hacks on how to minimize your out-of-pocket expenditures. What can you do to really lessen the risk and lessen the impact of student loans?
Don't just survive, thrive. The Financial Survival Network.
Fury Gold Mines is a Canada-focused exploration and development company committed to aggressively growing its scalable, high-grade gold assets with major drill campaigns planned across its 3.5 million ounce portfolio. Fury is led by a management team of proven explorers and developers with a track record of success in advancing and financing project development. Fury Gold Mines is well positioned to create value for investors with low-risk development growth and the potential for a new major discovery. Fury Gold Mines trades on the TSX and NYSE American under the ticker FURY. To learn more, go to furygoldmines.com. That's furygoldmines.com.
This is the Financial Survival Network, the information you need to thrive now more than ever.
Right. So, college is really paid for 6 ways, and see if I can come up with those off the top of my head. But so it's income, right? Mom and dad or the student can work. It's savings and investments. Again, mom or dad or the student may have saved or invested. There's financial aid, which is the primary provider of that would be the federal government. There's scholarships, and then there's reductions in other expenses. So that falls into three categories too. One is you can reduce your taxes so you have more money for college. And everybody says, well, yeah, that sounds good. I'll be happy to pay less taxes and spend more on college. You can reduce your interest expenses. In other words, take care of that 18% credit card, either pay it off or refinance it to something that's more reasonable. So again, so you have more money for college. Then we can reduce unnecessary expenses. I like to pick on cable TV. Some families have cable TV on 4 TVs. If all the kids are off to college, maybe you can cancel cable altogether or just reduce the number of TVs, but save money. So you have more money for college. And then, of course, the last thing, which most people want to avoid if they can, is reducing your lifestyle or delaying your retirement so that you have more money for college.
Right.
And that's where it gets complex. There's, 6 categories there. A lot of people are going to use 3, 4, 5 of those categories in order to make it work, and including loans. And loans aren't bad. They're just another tool in the toolbox, just like any other tool. It can be abused. And maybe, the hammer's not the right tool if you've got screws, but, some people try and make it work because they don't understand all the tools that are available to them. So for a lot of the families that I work with, just becoming more efficient is half of the battle. And then the other half is, again, potentially redirecting resources to meet the goals that they say that they're trying to meet, which again, often is education, right? So, and that's the other side of it is there's people out there where, the net cost of education, even at the lowest cost options, is still going to be $15,000, $20,000. And there's not much you can do to get it lower than that. So that's going to have to be paid, whether that's mom and dad, again, saving and investing, or current income, or the student takes on some additional loans, or whatever it might be. But if, again, for families that are earning, say, 100,000 plus, if you can get it down to 15 or 20 out of pocket, you're probably doing pretty good. Not to say that it couldn't be lower. There are kids out there all the time that, win a big scholarship or piece things together where their out of pocket is less than that. But, athletes, that type of thing. But if you don't know how you're going to be able to do that, in a lot of cases, the low cost state school is going to be between 12 and 24 out of pocket, depending on the state you live in and what they cost. And, so once you get your head around that and say, okay, well, if I'm going to need minimum of $40,000, $50,000 per student, and you start doing the math and saying, well, that's $1,000 a month, or that's $1,500 a month from where I am now until college is done, or, redirect this $100,000 that was earmarked for, a new car and a home remodel. Maybe we're going to cancel the new car and home remodel and move it to education instead.
All right. So the best thing you can do really in the final analysis is have a really smart kid who can get scholarships and grants and everything else. But we aren't all that lucky. So then you got to look for plan B, and there's trade-offs involved, I think is what you're saying. Obviously, you look to minimize the potential college expenditure. That could be through a state school,
right?
Or sending your kid, if they're not the super student, send them off to community college for 2 years, have them overload credits. So go in the summers and take an extra couple of credits during each semester. And then if you go to a state school in the same state, they've got to virtually take all those credits. And then you'll be left paying for a year and a half's worth of college instead of 4.
Right. And I guess I would be a little more careful about when you do that, you need to know where the second school in that series, because they don't necessarily have to take all the credits. That happens all the time where, oh, well, you took this math instead of that math. We don't take this math. We take that math. So if you knew that ahead of time, obviously you'd take the right math. But if you don't know it ahead of time, so there's a planning aspect, right? There's a burgeoning process out there where even private schools now are in the business of saying, well, you can go to the local community college and take some of these basic courses. These are the ones that you can take, and they're already pre-approved. They've got it laid out already. So you just need to go ask, and they say, yeah, we support these types of, these community colleges. We've got agreements with them. We know what the curriculum is in these courses, and we like them. So take these, and they'll automatically transfer. They'll count towards graduation. It'll work really smoothly. Versus, well, I did the best I could. I just picked some courses, and then you discover you picked the wrong courses.
Yeah, you got to plan it out for sure. And also if your child is in the upper quartile of their class. In high school, they can take AP classes, which can also count for college credit if the college accepts them, and if they score high enough. I know my son, one summer, he didn't feel like doing much, so he took a class at the local community college. It counted for high school. It also counted for college because it was a pass-fail. It was an easy course, easy couple of credits he didn't have to take and we didn't have to pay for. I mean, Brad, when I went to college, it was $100 a credit. So basically 128 credits was $13,000 plus all the fees, all that stuff, and plus a couple courses that I dropped and took new courses on. Right. Nowadays, it's like $1,000 a credit, right?
Well, right, exactly. When you and I went to college, it's also reasonable to say if we work hard in the summer and a little bit of a student loan, we can cover college all by ourselves. It doesn't work that way anymore. So I have a lot of parents say things like that. Well, I paid for all of college myself. It's like, okay, well, you show me where your student's going to earn $20,000 in a summer.
In a summer.
It used to work that way. It doesn't anymore. And again, students can still, earn their $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 in the summer, and it can make a pretty decent dent in the overall cost when they, if they can earn $3,000 or $4,000 and they can borrow $5,000 or $6,000 in their name. Well, now they're covering, half the cost of a state school potentially. And if mom and dad cover the other half, or they co-sign the loans, so it's eminently doable for most families if it's their highest priority and they want to make it work. So there's kind of two steps to the process too. One is you find a school that's at a good price. The second step is pay whatever you need to pay as efficient as possible. So that's when you start getting into the, make sure you maximize your need-based aid, which is, on my website, we've got a need-based aid calculator where you can say, well, what if I, paid off a credit card? Would that change how my financial aid turns out? What if I paid off my mortgage? How would that change things? What if I put money into retirement instead of into 529s? How would that change my financial aid situation? Sometimes families can make do things on purpose that allow them to qualify for more aid, just like in taxes, right? It's very similar to taxes. We do certain things so that taxes aren't as bad. The challenge is most people don't know what to do around financial aid that will actually have a material impact. And for some, all hope is lost, right? You're just not going to get need-based aid.
Yeah.
For others, managing your income and assets appropriately can make a difference. I had a family where they were going to a very generous high-end private school that they said, we're going to meet 100% of your need. So we knew if we changed things around and their need went up, they would get more money, dollar for dollar. So it was just a big math problem, right? Well, if we do this, the need changes this much, but if we do it that way, it changes that much. Which money should we spend first so that our need goes up the fastest? Because as you spend your money, then you don't report it. So it made sense to spend certain money before other money when we were actually paying the bills, et cetera, et cetera. So, just trying to be more efficient for many families is $10,000 or $15,000 or $20,000 of a little bit of tax savings, a little bit of interest savings, a little bit of, a little bit more aid here or there, a little bit, and I'll add that all up and it can be, again, it's not the magic bullet. It's not, ta-da, college is paid for. It's a little less painful than it would have been otherwise.
Incremental steps that you can take that in the aggregate will greatly reduce the price of college education that you and Junior have to pay. Somebody's going to have to pay for it, unless Junior is an Einstein, in which case they'll be breaking down the doors and then you don't care about any of this anyway. But if Junior's brother or sister are not future rocket scientists, this is something you need to consider. Hey, the website is tamingthehighcostofcollege.com. And Brad Baldridge, we appreciate your coming on. If you got a question for Brad, shoot me an email, kl@kerrylutz.com. We will get you an answer. And if you go over to financialsurvivalnetwork.com, in the show notes of this interview, click the link. It'll take you right to Brad's site. While you're there, please sign up for a free newsletter. Brad, been a pleasure, very enlightening. Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Carrie Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.